Now here's some ASMR grease and gear mesh. Well, I like it anyway. What's up guys, Steve again from RC Tanks and Trucks 24/7. Second video here for the Gmade pickup Buffalo kit, GS02F. Now this is awesome, so many parts, but everything is so well labelled. Like, just check out all these little bags. I tell you, everything you need, really easy to read, and everything's labelled and in the bags and everything. So that's always appreciated, and that's always a good start to building any decent kit. So first step, we're building the axles. Now it's very easy to follow. As you can see here, make two, so obviously the axles, their front and rear are exactly the same. They are locks, so you've got to make two of those. But the actual diff housings are different from the front and rear. So you can see that one in particular and that one there. So you just make sure you're picking the right one. But it's very easy. It's like a Lego kit, really simple to follow. So I've got all the parts laid out. Look at all these carbon hardened steel drive shafts, all these pieces as well, hardened steel. The pumpkins, steel as well, they look really nice, and all the gears are obviously steel. Check this out, these are the lockers, so front and rear the same. That's that little triangle piece there as well. So let me try film some of this building. I'm not going to film every single step, but I'll get the camera up and let's start building this awesome looking kit. For grease, I've got Fast Eddie's grease here, so I'll be using this for dog bones, transmissions. So I always use this. It's really nice, sticky, never goes wrong. But the Gmade kit also has its own as well. So if you don't have that, you can always use one that's supplied in the kit, and I've used this before with my sawback kits. Okay, so we'll start with the front and rear axles. They're exactly the same. So we're getting this locker piece here, sliding it in just like that, and getting our beveled gear and doing that. Now, like I said before, they're really easy to follow, and all the bags are labelled. And for example, this particular screw, it's a wrench bolt. It's saying, well, it's like a little cap head, so it's 2.2 times 6 millimeters. You need 6 of these because 3 in each of these, and you need to make 2 of them. So that is it. And always, when I was building these kits, always lose my 2 millimeter wrench. I can't bloody find it. Always happens. But anyway, so we've got to build 2 of these, put them in there, 3 screws in there, and also these ball bearings need to cap on the ends, and they are 8 by 12 by 3.5, so they're just going to push on just like that, and that step's done. Now that's what you left up with, 2 of those. Now, just a word of warning, when you're screwing down these, don't go all the way and screw each one down as much as they can. Kind of go in like a star pattern, similar to when you're doing up a wheel on your car itself, because sometimes you can do it all the way down here, and then this one won't be flush or won't be flat. So just a simple tip, you know. So just go around until they're all nice and flush. But that's it. That's what you left up with. Now, next step, we're building the other part of this front axle. We're going to be getting the input shaft and the bevel gear itself. Now we're getting this is a 5 by 11 by 4 ball bearing. Slipping it in just here, and then you're getting another bearing up here. This is 8 by 12 by 3.5. Let's push that in there, slide it back in there, and then we're getting our bevel gear. This is 11 tooth, and pushing that on there, and then we're going to be capping it off with a small 2 millimeter E-ring, just like that. The E-ring is just going to go there, and I've got the bag before ready to go, so I'll put that on there and get to the next step. Okay, so basically now we're just going to get this piece that we just finished and put it into the axle housing itself, just like that. It's going to be using 4 2.5 by 8mm cap head screws, locking it in just there. Simple as that. And that step's pretty much done. Now it's going to be very similar for the other axle as well, when you're attaching this piece to the main axle housing. But just put 1 screw in there so I can show you. That's it. And then we get to the next step. Going to be actually getting this, and obviously putting it in there. You've got the little bearing carriers just here, 1 and 2, sliding it in there, and that's it. Just like that. Now obviously we need to grease it, so I'm going to put some Fast Eddie grease just up in there, and that'll be good. Don't need to go crazy with it, but sweet, because also a good quality grease helps preventing from getting water and everything in there as well. So there we go, nice. This is why I use fast eddies. Look at that, that's how it just sticks. It's amazing. There we go there. That's probably all the grease we need. Now we got these carriers, or these bearing caps, that are going to go in here and hold that down. We're going to require 2.5 by 6mm round head bolts in there for each side, and that's that step done. And then once we do that, we'll get our pumpkin and we'll secure that just like that as well, and that housing is done. And just a quick one, you got this little lip that you can, like a little raised lip that you see on this carrier. Make sure that's facing inwards towards the gears. That's it. Forgot to mention that. Okay, all completed. Now it says in the manual don't over tighten things, and I'll show you that in a minute. But for example, those carriers that hold the bearings. But there it is there. So now we're going to be putting on the hub carriers, or the C hubs. And first we need to be putting these two 5 by 11 by 4mm bearings in the ends of the housing. So we look, obviously we've got left and right. Now if you look here on the side, there's like a little indentation just there, and that's what we need to line up with your hub here. See that indentation there? So basically, if you slide that on, that will be 10 degrees in what they say on the manual to run it at. So if you had it perfectly upright, like a 90 degrees, that'll be offset, and that's how you run it. Pretty easy, but in the manual it shows you run it at 10 degrees, pull it out, slide it back in, so they line up, and that's it. I'll show you what they mean on the manual, just like that, just like I was showing you. And down here is an example, or here's an example when I was saying about don't over tighten it. It tells you specifically just to be sure about that. And also here when we attaching all these parts together with these huge 3 by 10mm grub screws, don't over tighten them as well. So I'll do all that off camera and I'll show you the end result. So putting the last of these grub screws in, and what it's basically saying, if you over tighten it, it's going to protrude out past here and make its own hole. So we don't want that happening. So there we go there, all done. That step's done, so that's up to step 5. And our next step will be putting the axles together. Pretty simple, putting them all together like that, and then sliding them all through the main housing. Okay, so we got our drive shafts, and bear in mind, you got your left and right, or vice versa. One is longer than the other for the front axle. We're going to get in the wheel axle, which is this part here, the drive shaft, which is your smaller one here, and this piece here, which is called a drive coupler. And that basically goes in there, and it's going to be locked in with a pin. So what that does, we slide this in here, and when we see the hole just in there, we lock it away with this little pin. And that, but there we go. That's it. That's locked and loaded. Now what you have a retaining pin, or retaining ring, sorry it's called. You're going to make sure in the right way, so it's got that lip. Make sure that lip is facing outwards. Just like that. Push this little pin in so it's flush, so that ring can be seated just like that, and that's all it is. Now with this, I'm not going to use that fast eddy, so I'm going to be using like a silicone lubrication. Dry so it doesn't stay tacky and stuff, because this is the axle here, or the joint. If you get all dirt and stuff, it's always sticky, it's always going to be getting heaps of dust and dirt in there. So I think this dry silicone spray is good. See how it works, but yeah, that's what I've been using before. But that is pretty much it for that. Left and right is all done. Now basically we need to slide these shafts into the housings, and this key is going to match up to the key that's in here, just like that. All it is. Now up a little bit of grease on the end, slide it on in, and that's it. If you can see it's still poking out too much, you just move it around a little bit, hold the input shaft. There we go there. Done. Slide this retainer down, and that's it. Same for the other side, and that is all she wrote. And then we'll be actually attaching, or nearly be finished, the front axle. Nice. Not much to go. Alright, next up we have our steering mechanism. We've got your steering knuckles here with a nice high attachment point so it doesn't get hung up. So basically having two bearings, one in this side, you have one 5 by 11 by 4, and then one 10 by 15 by 4 on the inner side, just like that. Don't forget to put in your little guides here, 1 and 2. Do you guys enjoy watching people build RCs? I don't mind it myself. Kind of enjoyable, especially if you want to buy that particular kit. But I find it quite interesting. But there we go. I don't show you every single step and stuff because, for example, the rear axle, I'm not going to show you putting all this together because it's exactly the same thing. It's not as complicated as well. It doesn't have the steering mechanism. But there it is there. So I'll do the right side, but that's it. Lock it away with two 3 by 10 millimeter round head screws up top, and that'll be it. And don't over tighten these as well, because if you do, you can bind up the steering. So if you go a little bit, if you've noticed you've done a little bit too tight, just back it off a tad, and that's it. A little bit of movement in there. Don't want to have it so tight that it can't move and it gets bound up. Last step, step 9, is attaching these brackets for the link suspension. So you're using 2.5 by 12 millimeter wrench bolts. That's what it says. That's it. Looking good. So that is the front axle all done. Everything is nicely tightened up, not too over tightened like it's saying. So the next step, you got 10, 11 there, putting that bracket on for the suspension links, and up until 13 I will do off camera because it's basically exactly that but without the steering mechanism on it. And then the next step will be transmission. So I'll do all that off camera and I'll see you in a bit with 2 completed front and rear axles. Okay, there is the rear axle housing done. This bracket is nicely put on there. That's where the link suspension is going to go. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, so it's going to be the 4-link suspension. But what's different to the front axles, before you slide the axle in, there's a small bearing you got to put on the shaft there. So slide that in first, like the front one. Make sure it's in the notch, and then you get the other normal bearing, which is a 5 by 11 by 4. Slide it in and put it in, and that's it. So I'll put these other hangers in just here, and yeah, not too long until the rear axle housing's done. Not much to go on this step. This is the last screw for the rear axle, and that's it. Now we'll be going on to the transmission, and it's a 2-speed transmission with overdrive, which is awesome. So the front wheels spin slightly faster than the front. Stock setup, it's on overdrive stock, it's 114 revolutions per minute on the front wheels to 100 at the back, so pretty interesting. But here's the transmission, and bear in mind it has ball bearings and it has these bushings, but I don't think they actually rotate. I think it's more just for the spacing and all that kind of stuff. So it does have full ball bearings, but bear in mind, check out, make sure you look at the instructions. We've got these bushings just there. It tells you what it is. So it's not actually rotating on that. I believe it's just to help center it because it does have ball bearings at the end. So I'll get all these parts out, which is a lot out, and what I've noticed is when you finish with that particular stage, there's always kind of 1 screw left, probably to spare. So I'll just always leave them kind of in the bag so I know what it is if I need to have another one or if I've lost one, but that's cool. But there we go. Front and rear axle housings, and I'll get this transmission sorted now. Okay, let's move on to this transmission. Now you've got a 4mm E-clip here. I've already put that on. Now before I get into it, you can see these are the plastic washers, and they're very similar to the 5 by 11 by 4 ball bearings. So just make sure it tells you in the instructions to check out for the bushing. So basically what we need to do here is we grab our shaft, slide the bushing on here just like that, and then we need to lock a little pin in there. And my trick with these is I kind of just put a little bit of grease on them, because if you don't, they'll just slide around and then fall out. Because if you put a grease in there, see, it just stays in there. That's it. That's my little trick, so it doesn't go anywhere. So I've got a bushing, and then we get this steel gear. So here, and we're going to slide on that recess is going to go in. So the bushing isn't actually spinning or anything on this gear, it's just centering the gears in there. But so that's why the ball bearings are there. So don't worry about the bushings, they're not actually rotating per se. Slide it down, just like that. You can see that gear is locked in there, and then we get the smaller bushings, this one just here to center that gear, slide that down there as well, push it down nicely, and then we're going to cap it off with a small 4mm or another 4mm E-clip just there. So there we go, 4mm E-clip and another 4mm E-clip it says here, and all we need to do is get another bearing on this shaft just here, slide it on, and also one at the end there. That is that first step done. There we go there. Next up we're going to do this other shaft. Okay, now very important, whenever you see this little kind of asterisks or little kind of things like that, it tells you to double check this box. Now this is important because make sure it's in the right clocked or the right setting. So for example, A is that way, you can see that the kind of the nub points up to that, and B, the nub points up to like the clear space. So we've got to make sure it goes on that way. We have to get this shaft just here, we have to make sure that that is in the A correction, so it isn't. We need that point pointing to one of these gears. So if we spin it around, pointing up to that gear just there, so we basically just slide it on like that. And we need a ball bearing, we need a 5x8 by 2.5, which is one of these small ones here, and then we need this gear here. And what's important, that actually tells you the number of teeth on the gears, so you can see 38 tooth just there. Now we're going to be sliding it around and sliding it on this shaft just like that, and it's going to be supported by that bearing there. Now on this end we're going to be getting a 5x11 by 4 ball bearing, sliding it on just like that. There we go there. Now this will be a pin in here and a E-clip to hold it all in. Okay, so next we'll slide on another one of these smaller 5x8 by 2.5mm bearings, and then this 22 or 28 tooth gear just like that, and then a 5x11 by 4mm bearing just on the end there. There we go there, and as you can see, this is the part that engages the gears. That's the, see, slides in between. Obviously once it's all locked and loaded, it'll perform much nicer. So we need to now put another 4mm E-clip just like that, and another one here as well. You can always make sure that they're in as well. Sometimes they look like they're in, but you just yank them a little bit. If they don't come out easily, then you know it's in. So there's our selector. So obviously see, be first and like second, so it slides in between. That's it. And now it's saying there's a small hole in that shaft. We need to put another one of these pins in. I've already greased it up. Slide that down into there so it doesn't move, kind of even on both sides. And then we're getting a 32 tooth gear, 32, just like that. And we're going to be sliding it and making sure that that indent lines up with this shaft just there like that, so it locks it in, and then locking it away with another 4mm E-clip. So that's what we ended up with. So that'll be like first and second gear, and then all we need to do at each end, put another 5x11 by 4mm bearing just like that, and that is that stage done. Looks nice. Next up we're going to be doing the selector fork. I can do that off camera. That's just a little that's what goes in between here and slides and chooses the gears. So when it's built, I'll show you what I mean, and then we'll go to this step 17. So there is your selector fork. So basically that just rides in there, and that's when you shift your transmission, that's what goes, you know, first to second. That's it. That's all it is. Nice. We'll get started on step 17. I'll get all these parts out and let's see how we go. Okay, got our shaft, put a 4mm E-clip on there. So what we need to do, we need to get pre-lubed little pins, put it right in there, and then get a 18 tooth gear and match it up with these little indentations in the gear. If it doesn't go in, just make sure it's centered, and there we go. And then we need to put two 4mm E-clips just there as well. There we go. And then we need a smaller. Now this is plastic bushing. See, now there's a different styles, and these are the smaller ones. So I'll show you something, it's very important. So there's only one of these ones. Now this is a plastic bushing number 3, and see how it's got this, sorry, raised edge. These other ones here don't. Now there are 4 of these and only one of this particular one here. I believe that's number 3. So 4 of these, and there's obviously the smaller one, so it's a big difference. So you only need this once, and I do believe that's for the end part. But as you can see, where it says number 1, that's the ones you have 4 of. You've got 2, which is the smaller ones. But just bear in mind when you're doing this kit, this one here with the raised edge, leave it to the side. And these other ones that are smooth on both sides are the ones you'll be using throughout the kit, because there's 4 of those. Back to this, slid that down there. We need another pin. Slide that in just there. Then we'll be getting this gear right here, and also just sliding it down. It's going to be recessed into that little recess in that gear. Just like that, everything lines up. Be getting one of our bushes and sliding that down there and just centering it. There we go, like that. Now we need another 4mm E-clip to secure all that. Okay, now we need to get a ball bearing. That is a 5x11x4. Slide that all the way down to that E-clip, just like that, and also one on the end just here. And that's that step. Okay, so that is how all the gear should look. So basically we're going to slide it into the gearbox casing, which is just here. And now you want to grease everything up before you do. Make sure you have all your bearings still on the ends. They're all on here because they can slide off. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 as well. They're the main ones that will be carrying the weight. That's why the bushes are just there to center the gears. Got your shift fork there. You've got to make sure you grease all that. I just want to show you how this looks before it slide it into there. It's going to get a little bit messy, so I'm going to grease everything up and slide it in. Once it's in, I'll show you how it looks. Oh, I love this grease. Look at that, just sticks to it like glue, but in a good way. Not setting glue, but look at that, just sticks to the gears, coats everything really nicely. So that's all in there, and now all we need to do, we need to get the other half of the casing and lock it all away. Okay, got the case back in. It requires 4 2.5x8mm wrench bolts that hold it all together. Sweet. Okay, next up we're going to be building this part. So you've got another casing here with these long wrench bolts. They're 3x30. Just be careful in the kit because there are some that are 3x25mm. So just double check with the lengths because they are very similar. So we'll get these parts what we need. Obviously we need the housing that we had before, and this guy is going to go just like that, like this, and that's why I need those super long bolts, because they're going to go all the way down there, nice and snug. So now we're going to get 2 5x11x4 ball bearings. One's going to go in here like that, and the other's going to go up in here like that. Nice fit. And then we're going to lock it away with a 4mm E-clip just in there. Okay, should end up like that. Now what we're going to do, we're going to get that smaller bushing, I believe it's number 2, slide that down, and then there's enough room there to slide a pin in just there. So I've got a bit of grease on a pin. We'll slide that in there. You don't have to do with the grease, but it just saves a lot of hassle with that wanting to jump out. And then we're getting this 38 tooth gear, and we're just sliding that down there with that recess, so it should sit flush in there, just like that. So once that's on, now remember I was saying there's that specific style of bushing. So you've got the normal one there, which I believe is number 1, which is smooth on both sides, and then you've got this one here, which is number 3, which has got that kind of lip. That goes in here, just like that. And then after this, you should have enough room, which we do, to put a circlip in, or a E-clip, what they call it, another 4mm one just in there, and then lop it off with another ball bearing at the end. And that is what you should be left with. Nice running, smooth gearbox. Shifts into first and second with overdrive. Really sweet. Now, not much longer on this particular video, I don't want to make it too long, but step 19 is done. Step 20 is this particular one here. So I get all those parts, and I guess it's going to be going into that main housing that we just finished, getting the dual slipper clutch all set up and ready to go. So step 23 we can't do because I'll leave that for the next video, but we should be able to get all the way up to here. This is the slipper shaft, 37mm. First step is we need to get a bearing. Should only be one left. Slide the bearing on, lock it away with an E-clip or circlip or whatever you want to call it. Then we get our pin. Excessive amount of grease there, but that's no problem, it's not going to go anywhere. So you've got to make sure that you put the pin, there's two holes there, so put it in the one closest to the bearing, and then we get our 18 tooth gear and just slide it on. Make sure that the pin is gone and it's locked into that gear, and then we get another 4mm E-clip and lock it all down. Just like that. I always like to check that they're clipped in there. Sometimes they look a little bit loose, so you can just get into that like a little recess and pull at it. If it doesn't come out, then she's good to go. That's that step. So now we have to, this guy goes right in here, nicely meshed, so we've got to put some grease on there and then lock it away with this housing. So I'll get that out, and we need 3x18 wrench bolts to lock it away. Okay, so there's that part all ready to go, nice and greased up. And one part I forgot to show you was to add this particular piece to the shifting rod. Very easy, just screw it onto that thread. But here we go, we've got the screws that we need. So we have 3x18 and also 3x12. Now these are in separate packets, this one's in one just by itself, so it's pretty sweet. We need to get this main housing, it's like this, and make sure everything is lined up, everything is in. You've got your ball bearings still there, and we just slide it on. So we'll lock all this away. Bear in mind that the smaller screw goes in the bottom here and the larger ones go all here. Okay, there we go, all put together. Make sure everything still spins nice, and which it does. Now we have a slipper clutch. That's the next step, and what that does, it gives a little bit of a slip. So if you're going through and your wheels get stuck in a rock, you give it a bit of throttle, it won't strip your gears, it'll spin because it has these pads here, and these pads spin against each other, and it that takes a strain and slip, saves you stripping out all your gears. So good thing about slipper clutch, you can tighten all the way down, and it pretty much is just like a normal spur gear per se, where it'll just lock on. But if you just tighten it all the way and then loosen it, 1/8 to 3/8 of a turn, which is what they recommend, it'll give you that little bit of slip, a little bit of safety net on your gears. But it's up to you. They recommend 1/8 to 3/8 of a turn, anything in between there. So with a slipper clutch here, have these particular parts. So you have, this is a slipper disc, then your slipper pad, then you have here your spur gear, and that goes on there, and your slipper pad, you can see how it fits in right there, and then you get your disc and you lock it all away. That's why this is a dual slipper clutch. You've got one on each side, and you lock it away with these are called Conical spring washers. Now they got they have like an arc. When you're doing these Conical spring washers, just make sure the arc is facing outwards, kind of like a hi-hat on a drum set, and you need two of those. So basically you're going to be doing it twice. It's like that. I'll put it together and I'll show you how it should look, but that's it. And you lock it away with the M4 lock nut. Okay, our slipper disc on first, like that. Then our actual spur gear, put the pad already in there, and in the other slipper disc, and then our Conical washers. That's done, and lock it away with your 4mm nylon lock nut. And then you can, so what you're going to do, tighten it all the way down and then loosen it 1/8 to 3/8 of a turn, just like that. Once that's all done, I'll get this cover and that'll be all set and I'll put it on the front and locked away with 3 by 8mm wrench bolts. There we go there, all done. Fully tightened the spur and I loosened it about 1/8 of a turn. There's a basic picture for the conical washers, exactly what I was talking about. So that's that. I've put this cover on with 3 by 8mm bolts, 4 of them, and that's it. Now next step 23 we can't do because I leave that for the next video. This one's going too long. I'm going to put a brusher setup in here, and there shouldn't be much left. All there should be left is 2 of these spacers here, or bushings, plastic bushings, the larger ones, and 1 smaller one. And we got what's that? 13 tooth pinion gear. That's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know if you do enjoy these. I really like to know and hear your opinion. So if you like any questions, please leave them down below. If you haven't, please subscribe and check out the link if you want to get one of these for yourself. Cheers, guys. Look forward to starting on from step 23.